Life is made up of moments, some great ones, some terrible ones. Moments make up the man or woman. What do you do to prepare for that? What do you do when it has arrived? What do you do when it has passed? You don't make the moments make you. This is the Muamba Moments. Well, thank you guys for joining us again on this new episode. We have the magnificent Michale Foit here with us. Thank you for your time, Michale. Thank you for agreeing to do this and allowing us to invade your natural habitat, as we refer to it as.
The sanctum. Nah, it's my pleasure. You're more than welcome. Glad to
This
do
is
it.
your studio.
This is where the magic happens.
This
This
is where
my
everything
studio.
happens.
Yeah.
So, talk to me. Let's talk about this place.
Yeah. So and even when I was living in like an apartment, I always had one corner of the apartment that was had my art supplies and books that I love and art that I love, or prints of art that I loved, and it just the colors and the surrounding always got me energized. So when I had this house built, I built a room that was sort of away from everything, that I could just kind of come in and be me, listen to my music, and just get around my art supplies and paper and pen and start here sketching, and it's great. It's great.
Continuing with this room, this place, do you believe everyone should have a place like this? A specific location where you become creative and you create.
I think it's helpful to have a place that's your own, that you feel comfortable, that you feel that you can be yourself. Whether, if it's your room when you're growing up, or a closet, or a little spot in the woods or something like that. I don't think you necessarily have to have a dedicated studio or a place. I think that it's helpful to have your own private spot that you can go to now. There's people that are unfortunate enough to have that, and they go there in their head, but yeah, I do. To answer your question, yes.
But definitely taking that time.
Yes, I think everyone needs an important little spot, a little private spot that they can go away from the light and out of the scrutiny of others, and be themselves.
And it's not always been this size, or it's always been this big, or this specific studio.
Right.
But you've been able to always have a place where you can kind of sit down and think on a lot of things.
Yeah, energize. A place you can kind of come and energize. I used to, where I'm from, we lived really close to the Ohio River, like a couple 100 yards. And I had a little spot where I would go down to the riverbank and just look at the river, pretend it was an ocean or something. It actually was the Ohio River was pretty large, and just kind of like a little fortress of solitude. And then I remember at my grandparents' place, there was this little place up on the hill that you'd climb up the woods for a little bit, and then it opened up. There was like a tree stump, and that was like my captain's chair, and I used to think a lot there.
So, Michale Foit, tell us your titles right now.
I'm the CEO of Apex Energy Group. I am the CEO and founder of Apex Energy Solutions. Mm-hmm. I am the CEO of Touchstone Media.
Yep.
And I may soon to be as the CEO of Icon. Right now, we're in the early stages of producing that venture, but I am the founder and CEO of that as well. So that's for 4 companies, I think. Oh my goodness.
That's a lot.
Yes, it is.
That's a lot. It's a great accomplishment.
Just saying it out loud.
Lots of achievements. Sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Great achievements. Where did it all start? You mentioned Ohio. That's where you grew up.
Yep.
The family.
Yes. Sideville, Ohio. Sido means deerland in Shawnee, so it's down in the bottom part of Ohio in the Appalachian Mountains. So yeah, I guess it started there. That's where I'm from. I was born. My parents were from there, and I moved to Virginia Beach when I was a little kid, and then we moved back to Sideville in 1981 when I was 11. So
Okay.
I grew up there, and then I went to college. I went to high school there, and then I went to college at Wright State, which is in Dayton, Ohio. Then I transferred to the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. And then I dropped out of college my senior year with about 19 credit hours to graduate and moved to Hollywood.
So I've been in your circle, Michael, and a lot of people around you always say, man, Michael's a genius. Michael's a genius. He was born for this. But that's not entirely true. That's not how it always started. You didn't have Apex growing up in Southern Ohio.
No. No.
What were your early dreams?
Oh yeah, since I was about 11, I wanted to be an actor. I was always acting as a child in school plays and church plays, community plays. But I got really serious for an 11-year-old. I got very serious at the age of 11.
What attracted you to that? That's very interesting.
To acting?
To acting.
Well, the movies were just a magic time. Going to the theater, I still think that. And it was just great escapism. And my mother's a great lover of movies. They took me to movies a lot, my mom and dad. And so I just grew up, in being just fascinated with movies. And I would see something like, I would see a captain of a starship, and I'm like, I want to do that. And then I would tell my dad, I want to do that. And he's like, well, he's an actor. Starships haven't been invented yet. I'm like, okay. And then I would see like a really cool spy movie, and he'd say, well, that's not the way it really is. That's acting. And so after a while of this, I was like, well, then I guess that's what I want to do. I want to be an actor. And I got really serious about it at 11. I started reading books, and I started taking the plays that I was doing very seriously. These little, church plays where everyone was just sort of doing it as a hobby, and I was,
super serious.
I was very serious. Had all my lines memorized, and I would, trying to motivate castmates to be as serious as we were taking. So I was very serious at 11. I was very focused. So much so, by the time I was a senior in high school, they voted me most likely to succeed, bless their hearts, not because I had good grades, but because I was so focused on acting. All my teachers knew about it. I used to sign the yearbook at, look for me in the credits kind of thing. So there was just an obsession, really.
And so you're pursuing acting, takes you to LA.
Yeah, I moved out there. I dropped out of college after doing some professional theater, signed a couple of professional contracts, and you got really encouraged to do film. I had done some little films and stuff, some industrial films and some student work, and then did some like extra work. I got my SAG card, the Screen Actors Guild card, and I moved out to Hollywood in '92 without knowing a soul.
We're here at the Muamba moments, and I want to really get to the moments that got to make you who you are today. Michael with all these titles and the person that you are today. So you started with acting, it led you to LA. What were some of the defining moments at that time that kind of that you remember?
Right. Well, that was definitely a moment. Deciding to not
just
go back.
to go to LA.
Yeah,
it's a major move.
It is not to go back to school, which my dad had harped on me to go back to finish college. He used to say to me, a lot of people start college, but very few finish. That bothered me. I wanted to finish what I'd started, but I was a BFA acting major, and I knew that there's only, Harrison Ford once said, the only thing good about acting class is that it teaches you to be good in acting class. you got to go do it.
Right.
And so it was a very painful long summer that I thought about it, and then I just decided I was going to go for it, that I didn't want to be an old man regretting it, and I knew that I had learned what I needed to learn in college. And I remember driving out west with all my stuff, packed in my little Mitsubishi Mirage. I had like the fork sticking in the back of I had everything I owned in this little hatchback. And driving out west, driving across the desert, the farther I got away from home, the farther I got away from Ohio, the more scared I became, but the more, what an adventure it was, And, but it was definitely a defining moment. I remember as I was driving out there by myself thinking my life was going to change.
And you were certain of it. And so you made that decision despite people telling you not to. And I'm not here. I don't want to encourage the younger crowd who are going to view this to not listen to their parents.
Right.
But it's important to know what you want.
Right.
How would you explain that to at least that concept to someone about to make a major life decision, but the people around them are
Well, the irony
holding
is,
them back?
one of the I think this is ironic. My parents loved me and gave me confidence, encouragement to be the person that I was, but yet at the same time, the irony is that they want the best for you. They're afraid for you. They know they don't want no one wants their son to move out to Hollywood and have to get rejected and
There's enough horror stories about
yeah,
that.
oh yeah, of course. So my parents were no different. So it's not they didn't believe in me. They worried about me. And my dad always wanted me to have a fallback. He wanted me to be able to teach acting, for example. That made sense to him. But I always would tell him those who can't act teach. And I don't want to be an acting teacher. I want to be an actor. And so, but the irony is that I would have never had the courage to go out there and do those things had I not had the parents that I had. So there's a little bit of an irony, I think, there. But for sure, as I was moving out there, there was every mile that I drove, I felt more exhilarated and alive, and I knew that I was prepared for this. I knew that I had prepared all my life, or since I was 11, to be an actor. I believed in myself, and I think coming from a small town helps because I had the lead in all the plays, but I also played football. You don't get to do that in every school.
Right. So you're there.
I'm there, yeah.
You're doing it, and you're on your way up, and you understand it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
How long did you stay in LA?
I was in LA for 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Sounds shorter than it really took.
Oh, they were long 6 years.
I mean,
they were my 20s, basically.
Your whole 20s spent in LA. And so,
Almost.
what was the goal?
Well, my goal was lofty. I did not go out there for the palm trees or the beaches or the sunshine. I went out there to work in film. That was the goal. I chose film because I felt that the medium was so powerful that you could reach a larger audience. And I really wanted to have an impact on people. I just didn't want to be famous. I mean, I wanted to be famous, of course.
That.
But I didn't want to be famous to sign autographs and things like that. I wanted to be famous because of the influence that the platform it could give me to help younger people that maybe lacked some of the love and support that I had, to encourage them. I wanted to be a beacon, I think, for young kids growing up in small towns. And I wanted to bring a little bit, I remember this vividly now, I wanted to bring a little bit of like Midwestern flavor to Hollywood. It just so happened that Brad Pitt beat me to it a few years. But that was my goal. I wanted to bring that kind of thing to film, the kind of Midwestern charm to film. And I had heroes like people like Paul Newman, and he was from Ohio, and James Dean was from Indiana, and people like that. And it seems to me that film in the 80s and 90s had gotten just really diluted and wasn't character focused. It was special effects focused. You can even make the bigger argument that that's the case today. And they had really lost character. And of course, this was before the indie film movement had really hit. So I kind of wanted to be a part of that movement.
I love your story, Michael. You're leaving small town, going to a major city, LA. Your parents are not all the way in with you. You're going towards something that's pretty scary. You're not fully sure. You're on the drive and you're thinking, am I sure about this move? You're there now, and you're trying to figure it out. I mean, people go to LA all the time for the same exact goal. Not same exact. People want to be famous. Yeah. People want to act. Yeah. I've heard the story a million times.
Sure.
How did you approach just embracing that moment?
I was very serious about it. I immediately, got photographs done. Then I got better photographs done. I read every night. I studied scripts that you could pick up and you could rent them, and I remember reading them so I could be ready when I did have a chance to audition. I got part of a group of actors that I went to college with had kind of filtered out there as well. They'd kind of made their way out there, so I formed a group that we'd get together every Tuesday night and read together and try to stay sharp. And of course, it all fizzles out after a few weeks. But I was very focused. I kept wanting to move forward with that. I eventually got agents, then I got better agents, and then I started auditioning, and it was just relentless. because it takes so much money and energy to survive out there.
Yes.
And I didn't come from any money, so I had to work. So it was bartending during, in the evenings, late at night. I would pick up double shifts so I could make money.
But you were dedicated.
And then I would use all the extra time I had to focus on my career. How, every night when my head hit the pillow, I ran down this sort of list and thinking to myself, what did I not do that I could have done to further my career? And the first thing I would do the next day would be that. I would start with that. And so it was just it was sort of exhausting, but it was a relentless, focused approach.
I love what you said. You said, but it fizzes out after a while. When you're there and you have this big dream that everyone around you also has. And so in order to separate yourself from the competition, if you will, you have to be consistent. It's whoever does it for the longest usually ends up making it. What allowed you to be so consistent in your work ethic?
There's a couple of things. First, my dad worked on the railroad, and he's played football too for my dad's hard-nosed, hard worker, has an amazing work ethic. I mean, he's probably working as we're having this interview somewhere. I mean, he is a relentless taskmaster, and he always said that if he was working, I had to be working. So you just don't sit around at the Foit household. You're cutting wood, you're cutting grass, you're working. So my dad's very industrious and a very, very hard worker, and I get that from him. But my mother is a very creative person and has a great imagination, love of literature and film, and just I would say a curiosity, just a relentless curiosity on everything. She wants to know about everything. So I got that from her. And so the imagination and creative side from my mom, paired with this relentless work ethic from my father, sort of prepared me, I think. And this passion I had for acting, this passion I had for film. So I think that's what really helped me out a lot. But even with that, you would get down and depressed. And I met this guy, I'll never forget, I met this guy named Jim Ritter. I met him at the gym. And I don't know what made him contact me. He looked over at me and, I didn't pay attention to him. And he struck up this conversation with me, and he wanted to be a stock trader.
Okay.
And he was like an apprentice. And I was this apprentice actor, if you will. So we used to get together, and he gave me this book called The Greatest Secret in the World by Og Mandino. And there's several scrolls in this book. I think there's 10 scrolls. But the third scroll was about persistence.
I will persist
until I succeed, which I've showed you that, and that was a moment for me where that really clicked. Everything that I had sort of in my upbringing had galvanized in this Og Mandino 3-page chapter, or whatever it is, about persisting until you succeed. And that resonated with me. I put that on my mirror, and I kept moving forward. And to this day, I still use that quote, and I have it all memorized now, and now I share it with young people.
I feel like the essence of Michael Foit hasn't really changed, and we're gonna really dive into your story. And so you're acting 6 years now. So you get to 6 years, then what?
Well, so
Year 6.
Year 6. Okay, year 6 was a rough year, actually, in 1997 or whatever it was, 6, 7. Now I'm in my later 20s. I'm over 25. I had friends that a couple of people in my circle had kind of become famous, and I kind of saw some angles there. I had other friends that were working and doing commercials and television. And two things happened. The first thing is that when I got on set with them, I saw it from a different side, and it wasn't near as romantic as I had made it out to be. So, I was working and making such sacrifices, and I was like, well, it's cool, don't get me wrong, but it's not heaven. It's not
what you thought it'd be.
I thought it would be. As it turns out, the film editors and the film directors have most of the power in Hollywood, and so it wasn't the creative itch that I hoped it would scratch. Okay. That was one thing. The other thing is that other things, as the older I got, the more I read, other things became more important to me. Painting again, and it was something I had done in high school, art, because as an artist, you can be the director, the casting director, the producer, the star. So art, painting, and came back in my life, and I used to go to the Getty Museum every Sunday, and just by myself. It was another one of my little safe places. And then I was reading a lot about archaeology. I know this sounds off topic, but I read a lot of archaeology books. That sounds kind of crazy. I started reading about ancient histories and ancient civilizations. And then all of a sudden, my desire and ambitions to be a film actor it seemed kind of small. It just seemed like I was, in the scope of things, I had put this career on a pedestal and made such sacrifices. And the closer I got to 30, the more I realized, I still wanted it, but I also realized that life wouldn't end if I didn't do it.
Right.
So around that on year 6, a lot of those things started kind of happening. I was reading more. I was getting into art more. I was seeing friends become famous. I got to see behind the sort of the puppet show and see the strings and see how the sausage is made, and so all of those things were kind of culminating and kind of working on me. And then I got myself in some debt, and I realized that I just got tired of being poor all the time. I just got tired of not being able to take like a girl out on a date, or scrape up pocket change for the gas to make the audition. But and also I had a little bit of fame. I screen tested. I had did some national commercials. I had a little bits on some TV shows. And like I said, the closer I got to it, instead of falling more in love with the concept of it, I became less intrigued.
I love the fact that you headed in a direction that was difficult, that was tough.
Yeah.
That you didn't necessarily know the outcome of it when you first got into it. And the closer you got and you realized it wasn't what it was or what you thought it'd be.
Yeah.
Around year 6,
yeah.
You decide you have to make a change.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And we always talk about this. We call it pivoting.
Yes, we do. We talk about this all the time. Pivoting. Yeah. Well, so I hadn't quite convinced myself that I had to pivot. I was in debt. I had a cousin that owned all these Subways, the sandwich shops. He owned like 23 Subways or something, and he's a few years older than me, and he'd become this millionaire. And he said, "Hey, got a chance to buy these Blimpies, which are kind of like a Subway, back in Lexington. Why don't you come back, run these things for 4 or 5 months? You went to college in Lexington, you know the city. Clean them up, do your magic. We'll sell them. We'll make a little bit of money. You go back to LA with some money in your pocket, and maybe you can produce your own film."
Okay.
And I had come to the realization that the only way I'd really get to do what I wanted to do if I wrote and directed my own film. So that's where my head had been.
Mindset changes.
So I said, okay, I'll do that. And then I get back to Lexington. I'm there for 4 to 6 months. And of course I realized that it wasn't near that simple, of course. That was that I was going to have to get an SBA loan, and I was going to be there for years, and we were buying someone's bad debts and taking over these stores. It wasn't near as simple as we thought it was. And so I had a decision to make. Do I go back to LA? Do I stay and recover in Ohio? Do I go back to college and finish my degree? Maybe pursue art? And that summer was the long, hot summer. That was the long, hot summer where at the age of 27, most of my friends were deep in their careers. A lot of them were married and had kids. And everything I owned, you could put in a paper sack, pretty much. In fact, I did put it in a paper sack.
So now you're in Lexington and you're deciding, do I go back to LA?
Yeah.
Do I stay? When you're at that crossroad, who did you turn to?
I had a friend of mine in LA who was an actor. He's still an actor in LA. He was a well-known actor, a television actor. His name was Ed Kerr. He was a little older than me, and he was very successful. And he told me that I did not have to sacrifice my creative self to go into business.
Okay.
And I said, well, because at that time, I didn't know anything about business, and I actually looked down at business people. I remember bartending in LA, and I would see these lawyers and stuff come in with their suit and tie, and they'd talk about faxing and golf, and they'd pay with their American Express card and stuff. And I made fun of them because I didn't understand that world. I didn't understand that language. I thought it was all hollow and empty and just sort of evil. And he convinced me that wasn't the case. He had been a business major, ironically, where I had been an acting major, and he was having major success in acting, and here I was an actor having a chance to get into business. So, and he said, hey, Michael, are you going to have ketchup? And I said, yeah, I think we'll have ketchup there. And he's like, are you going to have the squeeze bottles or the kind you tear? Like, I don't squeeze bottles. So after about 10 minutes of this kind of conversation, he goes, well, look how many creative decisions you've made just since we've been talking. He said, so business can be a canvas. So he was very encouraging. And then I have a core group of friends, and then my mom and dad. Those were really at that particular time the only people I really had.
And so you consult them to make the next major decision on your life.
I did, and each of them gave great advice, but the best advice I got was, you're going to have to really decide what you really want out of life and let it come to you. And it took a while. It was not an overnight decision. It wasn't an aha moment. It was 4 or 5 months of really just writhing in pain, and torture.
And so you're still running the business in Lexington?
Nope. No, that was the Blimpie business. You're asking if I'm still running the business?
In Lexington.
Or asking if I'm still doing it?
No, not now. At the time.
At the time, yes. I was running it, and then I decided told my cousin, you know what? This is not for me. Thanks, but no thanks. And then I decided to teach acting class over the summer.
Okay.
And I taught some acting classes, and I taught some stuff in Cincinnati. And I spent that summer painting and drawing. I went to New York City to see a friend, and I just really was, I was on the mountaintop sort of praying and waiting for a sign.
Mm-hmm. And so now what?
So now I end up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm doing some local acting. I got an agent doing I was doing things like modeling for Cintas, the uniform company. So I'm got a Delta uniform, modeling like a flight attendant uniform, and I did Hasbro toys and some stupid stuff like that. And then I took a part-time job bartending, and I met this guy when I was bartending, and every night when we were cleaning up the bar, he would have a get-rich-quick scheme, and they were hilarious too. They were really funny. And then one night he says, hey, I've got a buddy that's selling windows. And I'm half listening to him. We're cleaning up the bar. We're sweeping up bottle caps. It's 3 a.m, and I've heard these schemes for weeks, and they're just harebrained ideas. But when he said windows, I said, what do you mean windows? You mean for skyscrapers or something? I mean, I never heard of, He said, no. He goes, not for skyscrapers, for people's houses. I said, well, don't houses come with windows? He goes, no, replacing windows. And I said, do people do that? My parents never did that. I don't know anyone that's done that. He goes, yeah, people do it all the time. And I have a friend making $5,000 a week. And I was at the point in life where I was ready to try anything. And I was with I was dating a French girl at the time, and I really needed to save some money to get to Europe. And so I decided to take a shot. That was another huge moment.
To go to
try to take a shot to sell windows. I had never sold anything before. My background was in acting. I didn't know anything about windows. I didn't know anything about construction. But I was in a place in life where I was ready to take a shot.
Now, do you feel like life was somehow preparing you for that moment?
Yes, but I didn't know it at the time.
You didn't know it at the time. And so even beginning in that business or jumping into it was still a leap of faith, almost similarly to driving to LA.
Same. It was the same.
So you've done it before. You tell yourself, why not?
Yeah, I at this point, even though I don't have any experience in sales, I was confident as an actor that I'd be good at it, and I told him I would try it for a month. And I tried it for a month. Actually, for the first 3 weeks, I didn't try it at all. I kept kind of blowing him off, and then finally, I tried it that final week, and I realized two things. One, I really like sales. I thought sales is like acting. It was like listening to people. It was tactics and objectives. It was getting your way in a scene. It was similar to getting your way in a sale. I liked helping people. I liked helping people make the right decisions.
Yes.
I liked the consulting part of it. I liked being in people's homes every night that was different. It was a different flavor, and I met fascinating people. And so I realized I really liked sales, which surprised me, because I always thought of sales as like, car selling or, some sort of used car salesman. That's the first thing. The second thing I realized was that the industry was very backwards. And then if you go back in the late 90s, before the internet had really proliferated, what you'll find is that there was a lot of misdirection. But in the age before the internet, really, the people were being lied to. There was all kinds of smoke and mirror selling going on. It was unregulated. And I thought the industry was sort of dirty and ripe for disruption.
And so, again, something huge that you don't necessarily know everything about. You jump right into it. Is that what you would say to people who have fears? Because a lot of people, we're in the entrepreneurial era, right? Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And people think that it's as simple as that. You wake up, hey, I have an idea, and let me get right into it. Talk to us about the beginning stages.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. I was driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike at 4 a.m. around Hershey, Pennsylvania, coming back from New York City, driving my Saturn, and I had been doing the window thing for maybe a summer or so, and I hadn't quite let go of the acting. I had a chance to pursue acting maybe in London, and this time pursue it maybe in a slightly different way, and I was still only 27 maybe, I think, and 27 or 28, and I just could not let go of this idea. So as I kept driving, I had this fantasy film in my head of, well, if I was to do my business, what would I do? And I come up with these ideas. Well, I would have the best people, and I would have a great culture, a culture of empowerment, and I'd play these little movie clips every Monday, Michael's Movie Mondays, where I would inspire people with these clips, and I would bring about technology into this industry, and I would apply white collar principles to like what had always been a blue collar industry, and really try to clean up some of the whole spin and hype, and get into sort of factual selling, more technically driven. And so before I know it, 20 miles had passed by, and I've had this whole movie in my head, and I've informed this entire company. I think a lot of people have these passing thoughts.
Agreed.
We all have these like little day fantasies where we're driving, and wouldn't it be nice? There's got to be a better way to pave a road or whatever these little fantasies are. And I've had those too, but this one just lingered, and I kept thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I got, even though it was 4 a.m, and I could feel my heart start pounding. And I felt very similar to how I did when I was driving out to LA. And all those things that had been working on me, that I told you earlier, galvanized. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make a mark here. I have got a shot to disrupt a very archaic industry and turn it around. And in the process, I'm going to make a big difference in people's lives, both the customers and the people who work for me. And then I'm going to change the industry, and then I'm going to make enough money for myself that I'm going to get out of the web of credit card bills and all that. I'm finally going to do something for myself.
I think that was an important moment for you in your life because, you're in the middle of pivoting because you just mentioned that you hadn't fully let go of acting as of yet. So you were still thinking about acting, and you had this movie in your mind about moving forward. And so once again, you had to pick faith, your belief in yourself, and what you can accomplish over the fear of failure. So how does it keep going on?
Yeah. So when I got back to that night, actually it was the next morning, I was so motivated that I couldn't sleep, and I just knew that I had this in me, which is funny because I had no business background really, but I knew the industry was so ripe for it that if I could just get 50% of the things I wanted to do, it would be huge. But like my dad, like my father, I knew that if I worked really hard and if I was really persistent, that I could be successful. And once you go to Hollywood and you go through that and you really give it a go, I'm not talking about going out there and having fun, but if you really give it a go, those 6 years had hardened me and prepared me mentally. I was very disciplined mentally. Years later, a friend told me they were so really proud of me and everything, the things that I accomplished as a business person. And I remember telling them that I was a lot more proud of myself when I was driving out to Hollywood. That if you can do that, you can do anything. And in comparison, starting my own business was, I don't say it was easy because it wasn't easy. You have to work 18 hours a day. But compared to what I had been through, it was easy. So I knew that I knew that because of Hollywood, that starting my own business would, if I could survive that, I could survive anything.
What was the hardest thing at the beginning? Because, like I said, a lot of people have those movies in their heads, and they'll tell themselves, okay, well, if Michael did it, then let me try it out too. What should they prepare themselves for?
To work insanely hard, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, to go off the grid. Just tell your family you're going to go off the grid. You're going to have to, it's an obsession. You have to want it really badly. It's not something you can do in a cavalier manner. You can't part-time do this. You have to dive all the way in. And the scary thing for me were the things I didn't know. I didn't understand what a P&L statement was, or what, I didn't understand cash flow. I didn't understand net margins and gross margins. I'd never been exposed to any of those things. So I had to go teach myself what some of these basics were. But, like I said, if you have a belief in yourself and you're willing to work really hard, and you get up every day and you put one foot in front of the other, knowing that if you keep working towards this goal, you'll get there. You can accomplish anything.
The biggest obstacle in your business career, what was it?
The biggest obstacle in my business? I think the biggest obstacle, believe it or not, is finding good people. A lot of people think it's the money. I was able to raise some money, and then I got myself sort of in cash. I got myself in some cash flow issues early on. I made some mistakes. My father graduated with a guy named Paul Lewis, who's our CFO, who was great with money and had been a CFO for $1 billion company, and he was able to teach me basics and really guide me in operations, things that I didn't have an exposure to. But that's all academic. The hardest thing is finding good people, because you have to be able to inspire them to A, want to work at your company, and B, work as hard as you do.
Believe in your dream.
And yeah, we all have to collectively buy into this dream. And so finding and retaining really good people is always, it's always the hardest thing, I think.
Did you have to develop that skill over
Yes.
some time? Did LA help, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, yes. The answer is yes. Training other people, and they say the most valuable thing you can give to anyone is your time.
Absolutely.
And so I had to make a lot of personal sacrifices to sort of unscrew the top of my head and give everything that I had learned and knew to these younger people. Now these guys were like 4 or 5 years younger than me, and I really had to. They were at my house late at night. You're training them 24/7. I can't tell you how many times I sat down to a steak dinner with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and as the waiter would bring it, I'd get a phone call, and then I'd come back, an hour later, and they'd all be in doggy bags and stuff, because you just have to sacrifice those dinners. I can't tell you how many movies I went to. Right, the previews were done. I'm starting to watch the movie. I get a phone call, and I have to take it because somebody needs me. And so those are the kinds of sacrifices that you just have to make for the first couple of years, for several years, really.
Right, because we're talking about, again, consistency comes right back up again, because the fizz will fade, But you have to be consistent, and it's the ones that are consistent that end up
Yeah.
reaching that next level, where very few are.
Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline, and you know, you have to be a little bit crazy to to dedicate, to sacrifice so much for this goal, and we're such creatures of habit, and we like, you know, we don't want to be uncomfortable, and most people will give up after a little while, and so you have to if you're going to stick in there for, you know, 18 hours a day for, you know, a year and a half, 2 years straight, you have to be very passionate about what you're doing. You have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to be just persistent. Because, you know, there's always going to be all kinds of trouble. I think that people are going to tell you to quit, or this is a waste of time, and they can't wait to see you fail. There's a lot of people that can't wait to see you fail. But I've always believed if you work really hard at something, and you stay focused on it, and you can visualize it, you can see it, you can make it happen. And I saw this movie play on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I knew it could happen. And what's amazing, it didn't happen exactly the way I romanticize it, of course, unfortunately, but it has happened. It has happened. And there's a lot of people now that have bought into that dream, and there's people around the country, as we said here, that are discovering that dream for themselves.
And so, took some time. You are building something with a core group of people that you had to work really hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
How do you transfer your passion? How do you transfer your belief in your dream into the people that are around you?
Two things. First is that it just so happened that a lot of people that end up coming to work for me, we had a lot of similar interests. So you look for people that maybe have similar interests. For example, a lot of those people had interest in art. You know, one guy's a singer, one guy's a writer. We got guys that play guitar, and so they have an artistic side to them, and they sense that I have a huge artistic side. That I'm not Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. You know, I'm not that guy. And I think a lot of the people that have these creative tendencies found their way to me, and so we could relate to one another. And I could relate to them. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I worked really hard to figure out, to listen to what they wanted to do and where they wanted to go. And every Monday I had these meetings, and I've been having them now for 18 years, that vision cast where we were going collectively, what we could all do to get better. They were almost more of instead of a meeting, they were really more of a seminar. They're almost like a life seminar. They're almost like a culmination of everything I learned in Hollywood, everything my dad and my grandfather ever told me, everything that I had, all my heroes, all the books that I was reading, everything got sort of amalgamated into these 45-minute bursts that I did every Monday, and I think that was a very organic thing for us, and I think that I really do believe that's helped the company shape the company's culture in a way. They're not brainwashing sessions. They're not there's no pulpit there. It's just, if you want to get better, if you want to be the best person you can be, then this is what you should do, because these are what these people are doing. And I use people like, you know, Michael Jordan or Marlon Brando or Harrison Ford or Mel Gibson or whatever the star was, or athlete, or entrepreneur, Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, taking these life lessons from these people and trying to share it with these young people, so they believe in themselves and they believe they can be better. Very similar to how I had when I first got to LA, you know, when with me and Jim Ritter and the group that I had. It was almost like a 2.0 version of that.
We're talking about the moments in Michael Foit's life, and we've gone through your story, and I see an evolution at each phase and each area of your life as well. And you're just talking about, it's been 18 years now, you've been running these Monday meetings, and I've participated in a few of them. I love them. So, in essence, at the core of Michael Foit, I see you living your dream. that started way before you got to LA.
Right.
You're impacting people. You're not acting while you're doing it, but you're doing just that. You're living your dream. You mentioned earlier icon.
Yeah.
What? Why aren't you satisfied with fulfilling your dreams?
So, you know, it's like, I think it's a lot of things, you know, when you get into it and you start to achieve certain levels of success and you understand the formula for success, the danger is you were like, well, that was really cool.
Can I do it again?
But you know what would be really cool? If we did X, Y, and Z next time. That would be really, really cool. I think that's part and parcel to the fabric of who you are anyway. You want to, and I think most human beings is that you want to get better. I mean, that's what put us on the moon, right? We weren't satisfied with just getting up in the air, flying around in planes. That was cool, but we were like, you know, it'd be really cool if we can take a rocket ship to Mars or a rocket ship to the moon. And I think that's just human nature. You always want to be better and do better. So when you see the opportunity to be better, you want to seize it. And you know, and so that's a struggle. You got to learn how to temper that. But you know, what's the saying? You know, why the man climbed the mountain? Because it was there, right?
Absolutely. And as we can tell, we went through the whole thing. You went through a lot. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't easy. When you're on this journey I call it the journey to greatness, and you're in this journey, you're continuing on, and you're impacting people like you are, you have obstacles. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. What has been the greatest, or what's been one of the failures that kind of impacted your life? What moment was that, and how did you use that to help you?
I've had several failures. Obviously, you fail a lot more than you succeed, and you know, I failed spectacularly. You know, you could argue that I failed in college since I dropped out. You could argue that I failed in LA when I moved back. Driving back was a long drive back. You know, there was times in that business where I had failed, or I had failed people, where I didn't handle situations correctly. You fail a lot, but I think the one thing that I have is, again, a gift from my parents is, you know, I've always had a belief in myself, and they've taught me how to follow my instincts, and I'm very passionate. I get very, very passionate about things that I believe in, and I know that if you apply the passion formula with the persistent formula, there's very little you can't do, very little. So that's how I overcome it. Is I stoke the passion fire, and sometimes that's got me in trouble. You can overstoke them, but more often than not, you know, my passion. I used to apologize for my passion when I was younger. I'd go to parties when I was in my 20s, and I knew I was being so passionate. And if I was arguing or I was talking about a movie, it could be something really simple about talking about a football game. But I got so passionate about it that it turned a lot of people off.
Yeah.
You know, people would say, "Yeah, that guy, you gotta, you know, he's a lot to take." And so I would go into rooms and quiet myself and try to monitor myself and only speak when I thought it was appropriate. I didn't want to become overzealot, but I don't do that anymore. That was in my 20s. Now, in my 40s, I don't apologize for my passion. I know that my passion has been one of my greatest weapons, and so I don't even disguise it anymore. And I'm sure it still turns some people off, you know, I'm sure it does. But I think in the long run, it's led me to have some success, and I know that passion has made a difference in other people. I know that for sure. So I don't disguise that anymore.
Biggest lesson.
Biggest life lesson?
Life lesson.
I think the biggest life lesson for me is you just have to stay positive. You have to look on the bright side. It's easy to get swallowed up in the day-to-day minutiae and get negative. But the biggest thing that I could say that's led to my success is staying positive and focusing on a game plan for the future. I'm extremely optimistic. I'm optimistic about the future. We're in America now, and people are very pessimistic about the government and whatever. But I'm not. I think as a human race, I think that our best days are in front of us. I don't know if you feel that way, but I certainly feel that way.
Absolutely.
And so I think I think people will gravitate to people that are positive. I'm truly positive, not falsely positive. I think people gravitate, and I believe with that positive energy, I think you can conquer anything with that.
So before we finish, time. We had a conversation earlier, and we were talking about Icon and the possibilities that could be. And every time, I feel like you always focus on growth, and you're always reading something. It's been rare that I said, "Hey, I read this book," and you didn't say, and you said, "Oh, me too."
I read the Reddit. That's how we first started meeting. We were reading the same books.
Right, but it helps you grow. It helps you gain more knowledge on different various subjects. Now, when it comes to time, I feel like I'm always learning something old because you're reading so much. What's your obsession with history?
Oh, I always when I first got in business, when I first got in business, I never heard a business guy speak at college. I didn't take a business class, so I didn't know what made business people tick. So as it turns out, the great generals, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Charlemagne, George Washington, these great generals, these military generals, have figured out how to get groups of people to follow them. And by the way, not just follow them, but die for them.
Right.
And so I always liked history to figure out what made these people tick. And I also believe that we haven't changed that much in the past couple, 10,000 years. I think we're essentially the Homo sapiens are fairly similar as we were 2,000, 3,000 years ago. So I think we have a lot to learn about history, and I'm fascinated by the romance of history. So I read a lot of history. In fact, I just read Walter Isaacson's book on Leonardo da Vinci. And what I took out of that book was this insatiable curiosity that Leonardo had. He was curious about everything, about how water moved, how birds flew, how, painting treaties, how the sun and the earth reacted, and how it caused the tidal shifts. And there was the body, the muscles, the sinew in the muscles. There was nothing that didn't escape his curiosity. And of course, now we look back at Leonardo da Vinci and we think he's some sort of godlike creature. I mean, how could he be so smart? But in reality, he was very special, obviously, but he also was very curious. And what would happen if everybody had that kind of curiosity? If everything we looked at, we were like, well, why is the grass green? Well, why? If we pursued that, what could we accomplish? So that's just who I am. I have a very large curiosity, sort of threshold, if you will, and I want to know why. And so I think that drives me in business, and it drives me in life. It drives me in art. It's the curiosity and passion that keeps me going.
And so, getting back to time and Icon, the meaning of time change?
It does. I read where you're given 24 golden orbs. Some people call them hours. 24 precious golden orbs every day. And how you use them is precious because you never get them back, no matter who you are, right? I'm sure Steve Jobs on his deathbed would have given all $7 billion of his fortune to have one more hour with his family. I mean, who wouldn't? So the older I get, those 24 orbs that you're given every day are more precious. I don't squander time the way I did when I was younger. You feel it pulling on you when you get in your 40s. You feel your eyesight fading a little bit. It's not quite as eagle sharp as it was. It's just a reminder that all this is very, very temporary. And so I start making decisions now, not based on finances as much as I base them on time.
Nice. And so, when you look back at the time that you've spent, do you have any regrets?
If I think hard about it and dwell on it, I'm sure I could come up with a few regrets. But I'm not going to. I think regret is pretty much a waste of time. It's a waste of. There's not any good that's going to come out of that. Sure, would I have done some things different? Yeah, probably. But I can't complain. I've had a very good life up to this point. My mom and dad are still very healthy. My brothers are healthy. They do well. I'm healthy. I've got a lovely wife. I'm blessed with great friends like you. I'm really very lucky. So I'm not going to go into the regret mode.
Amazing. Well, you had one more thing to say to a young man or woman who is watching this and saying, I'm really inspired by Michael Foit. I want to be like Mike.
Well, I know I've said this to you a lot. Probably the first time I met you. One of my favorite quotes is by Napoleon. And he said, there are only two forces in this world, the sword and the spirit. And in the end, the sword will always be conquered by the spirit. And I believe that. I believe that in everybody is this indomitable spirit. And if you can channel that spirit with passion and persistence and honesty and believe in yourself, I believe you can accomplish anything.
Amazing. Well, Michael, thank you for your time that you'll never get back. But I can guarantee you will impact many lives just through this little sit down. And I truly believe that you are a modern day Renaissance man.
Well, thank you, my brother.
Thank you for your
appreciate it.
time.
My pleasure.
That was the Muamba Moments with Michael Foit.
Boom!